We live in a world that never stops. Every day we find ourselves surrounded by messages, notifications, opinions from all sides, decisions that seem to multiply, and problems that seem to grow faster than we can solve. It's easy to feel lost, overwhelmed, as if we're walking through a storm without a compass or direction. And amid so much noise, so many voices vying for our attention, we sometimes forget to ask a very simple question: what's really important? Where can I find answers that truly make sense? We spend our lives looking for quick fixes, shortcuts, advice from friends, news, or even magic formulas that promise success and happiness. But despite all of this, we often still feel empty, insecure, or confused. There's something deep inside us that tells us the real answer lies elsewhere, a place we can't find in books, social media, or the opinions of others. That place is the wisdom of God. I'm not simply talking about accumulated information or knowledge, but rather a wisdom that transforms, that guides, that gives clarity, even when everything around us seems uncertain. It's a wisdom that teaches us to live with purpose, to make the right decisions, to find peace amidst chaos and joy amidst difficulty. Today I want to invite you on a journey to discover that wisdom we often ignore, a journey to understand how it can change our way of thinking, acting, loving, and relating to the world and to God. Because even though life is full of noise and confusion, the truth has always been within our reach. We just need to open our eyes, our hearts, and be willing to listen. When we talk about wisdom, we often think it's simply accumulating information or knowledge. We believe that reading books, attending courses, or having life experience automatically makes us wise. But the truth is that wisdom goes far beyond knowing facts or data. Wisdom is the ability to apply that knowledge correctly and effectively, to make decisions that bring life, peace, and direction in the midst of chaos. Therefore, we must not confuse knowledge with wisdom. Knowledge is important. It gives us tools, teaches us what is possible, and allows us to understand the world around us. But without the wisdom that comes from God, knowledge can be empty, superficial, or even dangerous. Divine wisdom, on the other hand, transforms the heart and guides the mind. It teaches us not only to know what is right, but to live it, to act with discernment, to choose the good, even when circumstances invite otherwise. Imagine, for example, someone who has studied business management their entire life. They know numbers, marketing strategies, leadership, human resources, but they lack the wisdom to deal with people, to lead with humility, or to make decisions that respect ethics and the common good. That person may be temporarily successful, but their life and business can collapse at any moment. Now imagine that same person seeking guidance in God's wisdom. They learn to lead with integrity, to value each person, to be patient and fair. That difference makes a profound difference that knowledge alone could never achieve. God's wisdom is also distinguished because it is neither selfish nor limited. While knowledge can be used only for personal benefit or even for manipulation, divine wisdom always looks for the greater good, guides us toward love, peace, and justice. It allows us to see beyond our own immediate needs and connects us with what truly matters, our relationship with Him, with others, and with ourselves. In essence, then, wisdom is the bridge between knowing and living correctly. It's not just about information, it's about transformation. It helps us make wise decisions in our daily lives, face conflicts with patience, recognize our limitations, and depend on God at all times. It is the light that guides our steps when the path seems dark and confusing. Now, to understand it even better, we can explore how this wisdom is reflected in our daily lives and in the moments that truly test our hearts. I want to invite you to do something simple but powerful. Leave a comment with just one word, purpose. This word will reflect what your heart is seeking today. We can think of wisdom as a beacon in the midst of darkness. When everything around us seems uncertain, when decisions overwhelm us and paths seem confusing, wisdom allows us to discern what steps to take, how to act, and how to react to the unexpected. While knowledge can tell us what is right or wrong from a technical perspective, wisdom teaches us to live those truths in ways that truly transform our lives and the lives of those around us. For example, imagine a friend confides in you a sensitive secret. Knowledge tells you it's important information and you could use it to your advantage, while divine wisdom guides you to act with integrity, to listen, protect, and advise with love, even if it means giving up some personal benefit. This difference transforms relationships, builds trust, and fosters an environment of respect and harmony. God's wisdom guides us not only in large or visible decisions, but also in the small, everyday things. How we speak, how we react to frustration, how we manage our time, how we invest our energy, and how we care for our relationships. Every daily action can be a reflection of that wisdom, and when we cultivate it, we begin to see profound changes in our lives and those around us. Another important characteristic of divine wisdom is its humility and patience. While knowledge can make us feel superior because of what we know, true wisdom recognizes our limitations and leads us to depend on God. It teaches us to ask for guidance, to listen more than we talk, to be patient with others and with ourselves, and to make decisions with a balanced and focused heart. In short, divine wisdom unites mind, heart, and action. It allows us not only to understand what is right, but to put it into practice in a way that benefits everyone and glorifies God. This is not theory or empty idealism. It is a living force that transforms our daily lives, our relationships, our emotions, and our worldview. Now that we understand the difference between human knowledge and the wisdom that comes from God, we can delve into how that wisdom profoundly impacts every aspect of our lives, from our relationship with ourselves to our interactions with others and our connection to the eternal. That's where we'll see its true transformative power. Now that we understand the difference between human knowledge and the wisdom that comes from God, we can begin to see how this wisdom truly and profoundly impacts every aspect of our lives. Divine wisdom is not just an abstract concept. It is practical, transformative, and applicable in everyday life. Let's begin to explore its most important manifestations. One of the first fruits of God's wisdom is the gratitude. When we cultivate wisdom, we learn to give thanks even in the midst of difficulties. Life isn't always easy. We face challenges, losses, and moments that seem unfair. But wisdom teaches us to look beyond the immediate and recognize that every experience can teach us something, that every trial can bring us closer to the truth and God's purpose for us. As Psalm 118 verse 24 says, "This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." Gratitude then becomes a tool that enables us to maintain peace and joy, even when the world around us seems chaotic. I'd love for you to take a moment to write in the comments what word or phrase best describes what your heart is yearning for right now. There are no right or wrong answers, just the sincerity of your heart. The modesty, it's another fundamental pillar. God's wisdom reminds us that we don't know everything, that our capabilities are limited, and that we need to depend on Him. Humility protects us from the arrogance that often comes with human knowledge. It allows us to listen, learn from others, and recognize that everyone we encounter has something to teach us. For example, a young person who constantly thinks they know everything at work may make impulsive and damaging decisions. But when they open themselves to God's guidance, their way of leading changes. They learn to value their team, acknowledge mistakes, and grow more deeply. James 3:17 reminds us that the wisdom that comes from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. The faith and trust are also essential. Divine wisdom allows us to trust that God has a perfect plan, even when we don't understand what's happening around us. It helps us rest in His promises and act courageously, knowing that every step is guided by His hand. An everyday example might be a student facing uncertainty about their future. Wisdom doesn't eliminate the difficulty, but it gives them the confidence to move forward with hope, praying and making decisions aligned with the values God teaches. The eternal perspective, it's another transformative aspect. God's wisdom teaches us to look beyond the temporal, to not get caught up in momentary problems or superficial concerns. It invites us to value what transcends time: integrity, genuine love, our relationship with God, and our positive impact on others. When we adopt this perspective, our decisions, relationships, and priorities change. We begin to invest in what truly matters and let go of what is ephemeral and superficial. The personal transformation, it is perhaps one of the most visible fruits of divine wisdom. It's not about changing under external pressure or passing fads, but rather a profound internal change that shapes our character, our emotions, and our way of life. Wisdom makes us more patient, compassionate, just, and loving, more closely reflecting the image of Christ in our daily lives. The community, it is also impacted by wisdom. It teaches us to relate to others harmoniously, to lead with justice, to serve, and to love without seeking recognition. A community guided by divine wisdom is characterized by collaboration, empathy, and mutual respect. Even in conflict, wisdom enables us to dialogue clearly, seek constructive solutions, and maintain healthy relationships. The daily life, with its daily decisions, challenges, and relationships, becomes a field where wisdom is constantly applied. From how we manage our time to how we respond to unexpected situations, God's wisdom guides us step by step. Every action, no matter how small, can be a reflection of His guidance if we act with discernment and love. Finally, the relationship with God and love. They are the center of everything. Wisdom is not just knowing, acting, or making the right decisions. It is also knowing God, drawing close to Him, and allowing His love to transform our hearts. It teaches us to love sincerely, to serve joyfully, and to act with compassion, even when it is difficult. As Corinthians 3:3 diz, "E agora abide fé, esperança e amor, estes três. Mas o maior destes é amor." Continuing with the exploration of divine wisdom, it is important to highlight how it is reflected in our daily decisions and actions. For example, let us consider the patience and perseverance, two virtues inseparable from wisdom. The Bible gives us multiple examples. Job, despite losing everything, never abandoned his faith or allowed despair to dominate him. His story teaches us that wisdom helps us stand firm in adversity, trusting that every difficulty has a purpose and that God works even in what we don't understand. Another fundamental aspect is the justice and equity God's wisdom guides us to treat others fairly, avoiding partiality and favoritism. Proverbs 21:3 reminds us, "To do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice." This means that our actions, guided by wisdom, should reflect God's righteousness in our daily lives, in our work, in how we raise our children, or how we resolve conflicts. The humility and the fear of God are essential to true wisdom. Proverbs 9:10 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." Here we see that recognizing our dependence on God, understanding that His will is above our own, and living in reverence for Him is what makes us truly wise. This fear is not fear, but respect and recognition of His greatness, which leads us to act with prudence and love. The ability to advise and guide others, it is also a fruit of wisdom. In Proverbs 15:22 we read, "Where there is no counsel, plans fail, but in the multitude of counselors they are established." This shows us that wisdom not only benefits us, but also makes us guides for those around us. When we act with discernment and seek divine guidance, we can offer advice that transforms lives, prevents mistakes, and fosters unity. The vision and discernment, these are other gifts of wisdom. The Bible tells us about Joseph who, by interpreting Pharaoh's dreams, prevented a great famine in Egypt. Genesis 41. His ability to understand and act correctly in critical moments came not only from his intelligence, but from the wisdom God gave him, combining knowledge with discernment and just action. This example reminds us that wisdom is practical, effective, and oriented toward the common good. Finally, the harmony in relationships. It is a reflection of divine wisdom. Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, 4:5-7, exhorts us to live with gentleness and peace in our interactions. "Let your gentleness be known to all men. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Here we see how wisdom guides us to act with love, patience, and respect, even when we face difficulties with others. Each of these biblical examples shows us that the wisdom of God is not an abstract concept. It is living and practical force, which teaches us to live with purpose, integrity, and love, touching all aspects of our lives, from personal decisions to the way we relate to our community and to God Himself. Continuing our exploration of God's wisdom, it is important to understand that it does not limit itself to teaching us how to act correctly in the visible, but also transforms our interior, our heart, and our mind. Divine wisdom helps us see life from a different perspective. to find meaning even in the smallest things, and to react in a balanced way to challenges that would have previously overwhelmed us. For example, let's think about the grace in the midst of conflict. In Romans 12:17-18, Paul tells us, "Repay no one evil for evil, but strive to do what is right in the sight of all. If possible, as much as depends on you, live at peace with everyone." God's wisdom teaches us that responding calmly and thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively, produces healthy relationships and inner peace. In everyday life, this can be seen in situations as simple as a disagreement with a co-worker or family member. Applying God's wisdom means taking a moment to reflect, listen, and respond with love, rather than letting anger or pride control our actions. Comment, share, connect. Your voice matters, and by expressing it, you're not only helping yourself, but you can also inspire others who need to hear this message. Another central aspect of wisdom is personal discipline. Proverbs 25:28 says, "A man without self-rule is like a city broken down and without walls." True wisdom teaches us to control our impulses, to choose what is right even when it is difficult, and to stand firm in our values and principles. This is reflected in everyday decisions such as managing our time, controlling negative emotions, resisting destructive habits, or even handling money responsibly. Wisdom gives us the ability to live in order, avoiding harmful consequences that often arise from impulsiveness or a lack of reflection. Wisdom is also manifested in empathy and service to others. Jesus taught us through his life that loving and serving others is the path to true greatness. Matthew 20:26-28 reminds us, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave." Applying wisdom means learning to put yourself in someone else's shoes, acting with compassion and offering help without expecting a reward, valuing each person, and building relationships based on respect and genuine care. A practical example might be a team leader facing a conflict between members of his group. Knowledge can tell him how to organize tasks or impose rules, but divine wisdom allows him to listen carefully, mediate fairly, and promote an environment of cooperation, transforming not only the outcome of the conflict, but also the culture of the group. The vision and long-term planning, they are also manifestations of God's wisdom. In Proverbs 16:3 we are admonished, "Commit your works to the Lord, and your thoughts will be established." This teaches us that it is not enough to act correctly in the moment. We must integrate God into our planning, trust in his guidance, and make decisions that are aligned with his purpose. This can apply to our education, career, finances, or personal relationships. Wisdom helps us think beyond the short term, anticipate consequences, and build a solid and blessed future. The ability to forgive, it is also a profound fruit of wisdom. Ephesians 4:31-32 tells us, "Let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and slander be put away from you, along with all malice. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ forgave you." Divine wisdom gives us the strength to release resentment and act with love even toward those who have hurt us. This doesn't mean ignoring pain, but choosing peace and reconciliation as our way of life. Finally, the wisdom teaches us to live with purpose and gratitude, integrating all these elements into a coherent and meaningful life. When our mind, heart, and actions are guided by divine wisdom, we find clarity in our decisions, strength in difficult times, and peace amid uncertainty. Every day becomes an opportunity to apply these principles, to transform our lives and the lives of those around us, and to reflect God's love in every action. The wisdom of God, then, is not just theory or an abstract ideal. It is a lively and practical guide, a light that illuminates our choices, strengthens our character, and enables us to live in ways that honor God and benefit others. As we delve deeper into this wisdom, we begin to notice how every decision, every relationship, and every challenge becomes an opportunity to grow and reflect his love and direction. Now that we've explored the depth of God's wisdom and how it can transform every aspect of our lives, I want to invite you to take a concrete step. It's not just about passive listening or learning, but about apply these principles in your daily life and let wisdom become tangible in your life. I want you to take a moment to reflect what area of your life needs more clarity, peace, or guidance. Perhaps it's a decision you've been putting off, a complicated relationship, a habit you want to change, or simply the need to feel more peace in the midst of chaos. Whatever it is, you can take a first step today. Seek that wisdom directly in God's Word, pray for discernment, and allow His Spirit to guide you. And while you reflect on this, I would like to invite you to actively participate with this content. Leave us a comment with a word that represents what you most desire to learn or receive from divine wisdom. It could be peace, discernment, love, humility, or any other word that arises in your heart. By writing it, you are not only sharing your desire with us, but you are also declaring your openness to receiving God's guidance in that area of your life. If this message has touched you in any way, I also invite you to like the video and subscribe so that more people can discover God's wisdom and find inspiration amidst the world's confusion. Activating notifications will allow you to receive each new teaching, reminding you that you're not alone on this journey and that there are always resources to bring you closer to the truth. And here's something even more powerful. By taking a moment to write your word in the comments, you are spreading peace and reflection to others. Perhaps someone will read your comment and discover that they're not alone in their doubts, that someone else is also searching for direction and purpose. That small, seemingly simple action becomes an act of community, support, and a silent witness to the wisdom that comes from God. Furthermore, I encourage you to take this action a step further. Open your Bible, look for verses related to the word you chose, meditate on them, and pray that God will show you how to apply them in your life. You'll see how small decisions guided by His wisdom begin to produce profound and lasting changes, from the way you relate to how you make important decisions at work, in your family, and in your personal growth. This isn't just a call to engage with a video. It's a call to take action in your spiritual and emotional life to allow divine wisdom to transform your way of thinking, feeling, and acting. Every small step of obedience and openness to God's guidance multiplies, touching not only your life but the lives of those around you. Remember, wisdom isn't just about being understood. It must be lived, experienced, and shared. Today you have the opportunity to begin doing just that. The wisdom that comes from God is much more than knowledge. It is a living guide that transforms our minds, our hearts, and our actions. It is the light that allows us to discern the right path, even in the midst of confusion and uncertainty, and it gives us peace when everything around us seems chaotic. This wisdom is not simply learned from books or experiences. It requires searching, humility, prayer, and a willingness to listen to God's voice in every circumstance. Cultivating this wisdom begins with God's Word, which is the primary source of understanding and direction. The Bible offers us concrete teachings, examples of lives that reflected discernment, and advice that directly applies to our daily lives. Proverbs 2:6 reminds us, "For the Lord gives wisdom, from His mouth come knowledge and understanding." Spending time daily reading and meditating on Scripture connects us to that wisdom that transforms our decisions, our relationships, and our character. A small habit, such as choosing a verse each day and reflecting on how to apply it to our lives, can make a big difference over time. Prayer is another fundamental pillar. God's wisdom doesn't come solely through study. It requires us to open our hearts and ask for guidance. James 1:5 assures us, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives to all generously and without finding fault, and it will be given to him." When we face difficult decisions, uncertainty, or conflict, prayer allows us to seek discernment, clarity, and direction. Taking a few minutes to ask God for understanding so we can act with justice and love helps us respond wisely in every situation. Living wisely also involves learning to listen before speaking. Proverbs 18:13 says, "He who answers before hearing finds folly and shame." Listening attentively allows us to better understand others, avoid misunderstandings, and make informed decisions. In everyday life, this applies to conversations with family, friends, or co-workers. Taking a moment to listen with empathy and attention reflects God's wisdom because it allows us to respond clearly and respectfully rather than reacting impulsively. Patience and perseverance are inseparable fruits of divine wisdom. Romans 5:3-4 reminds us, "Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance testing, and testing hope." Every challenge, every difficulty can be turned into an opportunity for growth if we face it with faith and patience. Wisdom teaches us that results are not always immediate, but perseverance and trust in God produce lasting changes in our character and in our lives. Integrity and humility are equally essential. Proverbs 11:3 says, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the perverseness of the faithless destroys them." Living with honesty, consistency, and humility allows us to make fair decisions and live in alignment with God's principles, avoiding mistakes that arise from pride or impulsiveness. Wisdom teaches us to recognize our limitations and depend on God, understanding that our strength and discernment come from Him, not just from our intellect or abilities. God's wisdom also guides us in how we relate to others. It teaches us to act with compassion, love, and genuine service. Matthew 20:26-28 reminds us that true greatness is found in serving others. "Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first among you must be your slave." Applying wisdom in daily life means valuing each person, listening with empathy, and offering help without expecting a reward, building relationships based on respect and love. Even in difficult situations, wisdom helps us remain calm, mediate fairly, and promote harmony. Vision and discernment are other essential gifts of divine wisdom. Joseph, by interpreting Pharaoh's dreams and saving Egypt from famine, Genesis 41, demonstrates that wisdom combines knowledge, discernment, and righteous action. This example teaches us that wisdom is not just theory, it is practical and effective. It enables us to make decisions that benefit not only ourselves, but those around us, guided by divine principles that transcend the immediate and the superficial. Finally, God's wisdom teaches us to live with purpose and gratitude. It allows us to see each day as an opportunity to grow, make conscious choices, and reflect God's love in our actions. Ephesians 5:15-16 admonishes us, "Be careful then how you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of the time, because the days are evil." Every moment can become an act of wisdom if we choose to act with intention, love, and dependence on God. Thus, the wisdom that comes from Him becomes a beacon that guides our path, strengthens our character, gives us peace in the midst of uncertainty, and allows us to positively impact the lives of those around us, transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary through decisions filled with discernment, faith, and divine love. God's wisdom guides us not only in big decisions, but also in the smallest details of our daily lives. Every interaction, every thought, and every choice can be a place where His wisdom manifests itself. For example, when we face a difficult situation at work, such as a conflict with a colleague or a project that seems overwhelming, divine wisdom teaches us to evaluate before reacting, to find the best way to communicate our ideas respectfully and to act with integrity. Proverbs 15:1 says, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger." This verse reminds us that the way we speak and act can calm or escalate any situation. Wisdom allows us to choose calm, prudence, and clarity. If this message touched you in any way, please leave a comment telling me what resonated most with you, or simply write down the word that represents your journey toward wisdom and growth. In family life, wisdom guides us to cultivate strong and loving relationships. Sometimes we get frustrated with our partners, children, or siblings because expectations aren't met or because misunderstandings arise. Divine wisdom teaches us to listen patiently, forgive, and act with love even when it's not easy. Ephesians 4:32 tells us, "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God in Christ forgave you." Practicing this teaching transforms homes, creating environments of peace, respect, and understanding where each member feels valued and loved. Wisdom also helps us to manage our time and priorities. In a world full of distractions and constant demands, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and lose focus. Proverbs 24:27 advises, "Prepare your work outside and lay it out in your fields, then build your house." This verse invites us to organize what's important first, establish priorities, and act with discipline. Applying this teaching can mean dedicating time to study, work, rest, and family time in a balanced way, preventing the urgent from overshadowing what's truly meaningful. Another crucial aspect is the wisdom in financial decisions. The Bible teaches principles of prudence, honesty, and generosity. Proverbs 21:20 says, "Precious treasure and oil are in the house of the wise, but a foolish person squanders it all." God's wisdom guides us to manage our resources wisely, avoid impulsiveness, and invest in what truly brings value and well-being to our lives and the lives of others. Applying these financial principles also helps us build security, independence, and the ability to help those in need. Divine wisdom also prepares us to face uncertainty and fear. When plans are interrupted, when illness, loss, or unexpected changes arise, wisdom allows us to trust in God and maintain hope. Isaiah 41:10 reminds us, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Practicing this trust transforms anxiety into peace, fear into courage, and uncertainty into an opportunity for growth and dependence on God. Furthermore, wisdom guides us in building our community and social circle. It teaches us to choose friends who build us up, to advise and support those who need guidance, and to act with justice and compassion toward all. Proverbs 13:20 says, "He who walks with the wise will be wise, but he who associates with fools will be destroyed." Wisdom helps us discern healthy relationships, be positive influences, and receive positive influence, cultivating environments where respect, honesty, and love are priorities. Finally, the wisdom that comes from God reminds us that our life has a purpose greater than ourselves. It teaches us to look beyond material success or immediate concerns, to live so that every action reflects eternal principles, love, and justice. Every decision, every conversation, every thought can be an opportunity to live guided by His light. Wisdom gives us clarity to choose the right path, strength to persevere, and serenity to accept what we cannot change, while trusting that God works in all things for our good and His glory. Living with God's wisdom means transforming the everyday into something sacred, the ordinary into something meaningful, and the difficult into an opportunity for growth. It means applying divine guidance to every action, thought, and relationship, trusting that each step aligned with God produces fruits of peace, love, patience, and discernment that bless not only our lives, but also those of those around us. The wisdom that comes from God is also manifested in the way we face life's trials and challenges. Let's take as an example Solomon, known for his exceptional wisdom. When he was called to lead Israel, God offered him anything he desired, and Solomon asked for an understanding heart to judge your people and to discern between good and evil. 1 Kings 3:9. This choice demonstrates that true wisdom seeks the common good, not just personal gain. Applied to our daily lives, this means that our decisions should consider not only our immediate needs, but also how they affect others and how they reflect God's principles. For example, a workplace leader who chooses to prioritize justice, respect, and the well-being of his team, even if it involves personal sacrifices, is acting with the wisdom that comes from God. Another powerful biblical example is Daniel, who even as a young man and a foreigner in the Babylonian court, remained faithful to God and applied discernment in every situation. Daniel 1:8 tells us, "So Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the king's portion of food or with the wine which he drank." God's wisdom enabled him to maintain integrity even in a hostile environment and to make decisions that distinguished him among the rulers. For us, this translates into maintaining integrity amid social, professional, or academic pressure, choosing what is right even when it is difficult or unpopular. Wisdom gives us the strength to say no to what distances us from God and yes to what brings us closer to His purpose. Wisdom is also reflected in the way of driving difficult relationships. Let's take the example of Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers and then unjustly imprisoned in Egypt, Genesis 37 and 39. Joseph could have responded with resentment or revenge, but God's wisdom guided him to act with patience, discernment, and trust in God's plan. Eventually, his prudence and faithfulness led him to save many people during a famine. Today, this teaches us that even in situations of betrayal, injustice, or pain, divine wisdom helps us remain calm, make right decisions, and expect God to transform circumstances in our favor. The wisdom in communication. This is another crucial aspect. Proverbs 25:11 says, "A word in season is like apples of gold on a silver platter." This teaches us that words, when used with discernment and love, can heal, inspire, and guide others. Applied to everyday life, this means thinking before speaking, seeking ways to speak the truth respectfully, and choosing words that build up rather than tear down. For example, in a family conflict, Expressing our feelings calmly and empathetically, rather than reacting with anger or sarcasm, is an act of wisdom that can transform the relationship. The financial wisdom, it also has clear examples in the Bible. In Luke 14:28-30, Jesus teaches, "For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" This teaches us to plan, manage resources, and make wise decisions. In modern life, this can be applied to how we manage our money, savings, investments, or even our time and energy. Wisdom allows us to foresee consequences, avoid unnecessary debt, and act responsibly, ensuring a stable and blessed future. The wisdom in decision-making. Everyday life is reflected in the ability to discern what is urgent from what is important. Proverbs 4:7 tells us, "Wisdom is the principal thing. Get wisdom, and over all your possessions get understanding." This reminds us that no wealth, achievement, or comfort replaces wisdom. Taking time to study, reflect, and pray before making important decisions, whether about a job change, marriage, or personal project, ensures that our choices are aligned with God's purposes and produce lasting fruit. The wisdom that comes from God also teaches us to face fear and uncertainty with confidence. Isaiah 41:10 reminds us, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." In daily life, this translates into not letting anxiety or worry dominate our decisions. When we face changes, losses, or unexpected situations, divine wisdom helps us remain calm, seek sound solutions, and trust that God guides every step. God's wisdom reminds us that our purpose transcends the immediate. It's not just about making good decisions, but about living a life that reflects love, justice, and faith at all times. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths." This means that every action, no matter how small, can be an act of wisdom if we do it with intention, love, and dependence on God. From how we treat a neighbor to how we handle a complex situation at work, divine wisdom guides us to act in ways that honor God and benefit those around us. Living with the wisdom that comes from God transforms the everyday into sacredness, the ordinary into meaningfulness, and the difficult into an opportunity for growth. Every decision, every relationship, every challenge becomes a space where we can apply divine guidance, reflecting patience, discernment, love, and faith. Thus, wisdom not only strengthens us, but also becomes a beacon for others, illuminating paths, healing hearts, and creating communities where respect, justice, and love are the norm. The wisdom that comes from God is a gift that guides our lives, strengthens our character, and enables us to live according to his purpose. The Bible reminds us again and again that wisdom is not mere human knowledge, but a profound understanding that transforms our way of thinking, acting, and relating. In Proverbs 1:7 we read, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." This verse teaches us that true wisdom begins with recognizing God as the source of all knowledge and discernment. Without this reverence and dependence, our minds may be filled with ideas, but they will lack direction and purpose. Proverbs 2:6 reinforces this idea. "For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding." God's wisdom is not partial or limited. It is abundant, available to all who sincerely seek it. James 1:5 exhorts us to ask for it. "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men liberally and without finding fault, and it will be given him." This assures us that there is no barrier to receiving divine understanding. Our willingness and prayer are sufficient to access that guidance that illuminates our lives. The Bible also highlights that wisdom is manifested in prudence and the ability to make good decisions. Proverbs 3:21-23 says, "My son, do not let these things depart from your mind. Observe prudence and discretion, and they will be life to your soul and grace to your neck. Then you will walk safely in your way, and your foot will not stumble." Here we see that wisdom protects, guides, and reassures the human heart, offering clarity amid confusion and strengthening our ability to walk through life with firmness and confidence. Proverbs 4:7 reminds us of the importance of acquiring wisdom above all else. "Wisdom is the principal thing. Acquire wisdom, and with all your possessions acquire understanding." This call to prioritize wisdom shows us that no achievement, wealth, or worldly knowledge can replace God's guidance. Wisdom should be our constant pursuit, a daily practice that influences every thought and action. Wisdom also protects us from evil and helps us discern right from wrong. Proverbs 14:16 says, "A wise man fears and departs from evil, but a fool is brazen and self-confident." This fear is not fear, but recognition of God's authority and justice, which enables us to act prudently and avoid destructive paths. Similarly, Proverbs 16:16 teaches us, "Wisdom is better than gold, and understanding is better than silver." God's wisdom is a priceless treasure, more valuable than any material wealth, because it provides direction, protection, and lasting blessing. Psalm 111 verse 10 reinforces this truth. "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and all who do his commandments have good understanding. His praise endures forever." Obedience to God's principles, combined with reverence and respect for him, produces understanding and a strong character that endures even in the face of adversity. In Proverbs 9:10, we read again, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." Each day, as we acknowledge God's sovereignty and seek his guidance, our minds and hearts are filled with discernment that enables us to navigate life with clarity. James 3:17 shows us the practical nature of divine wisdom. "But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle and kind, full of mercy and good fruits, sincere without vain conceit." God's wisdom not only illuminates our decisions, but also transforms our character and our way of relating to others. It is a wisdom that promotes peace, goodness, mercy, and visible fruits in our daily lives. Proverbs 16:16 adds, "Wisdom is better to acquire than gold, and understanding is better than silver." This wisdom is not abstract or theoretical, it is practical. It guides, protects, and produces fruit in our lives, ensuring that our decisions reflect God's justice and love. In Proverbs 19:20 we are admonished, "Listen to advice and accept correction so that you may be wise in your old age." A willingness to learn, accept guidance, and apply correction is an essential element for growing in wisdom. Proverbs 8:11 reminds us, "For wisdom is better than rubies, and nothing we desire can compare with it." The wisdom that comes from God not only enriches our minds and hearts, but also gives us eternal value, a perspective that transcends the material and the immediate, guiding us toward a full, blessed life aligned with God's purposes. Every day, seeking, praying for, and applying this wisdom allows us to live with discernment, peace, and clear direction, reflecting God's light and love in our actions. The wisdom that comes from God is not limited solely to an understanding of right or wrong. It is an understanding that encompasses our entire being and influences every decision, thought, and action. Proverbs 8:12 tells us, "I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge and discretion." This teaches us that divine wisdom is closely linked to prudence and discernment. It is not about acting impulsively, but about evaluating, considering, and acting fairly and wisely. By seeking God's wisdom, we learn to balance our emotions, our minds, and our actions, gaining clarity even in the midst of confusion and chaos. Proverbs 3:13-18 reminds us of the benefits and rewards of wisdom. "Blessed is the man who finds wisdom, and the man who gets understanding. For her gain is better than the gain of silver, and her fruits than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and nothing you desire can be compared to her. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left are riches and honor. Her ways are paths of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace." This passage teaches us that wisdom not only guides decisions, but also brings with it tangible and spiritual blessings, peace, stability, integrity, and well-being in all aspects of life. Wisdom also teaches us to handle the temptation and influence of the world. James 3:13-17 tells us, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good conduct his deeds with the humility of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and lie against the truth. This wisdom does not come from above, but is earthly, sensual, and devilish. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to behold, full of mercy and good fruits, sincere, without vain conceit." God's wisdom distinguishes us from worldly knowledge. It is not arrogant or selfish, but humble, peaceful, and oriented toward building good. It enables us to act righteously, even when circumstances or people around us seek otherwise. Proverbs 19:8 says, "He who gets wisdom loves his own soul, and he who keeps understanding finds what is good." This shows us that seeking wisdom is not just an act of intellectual learning, but an act of personal and spiritual care. Every wise decision protects us, strengthens our character, and leads us toward blessing. In a world where haste and superficiality prevail, God's wisdom reminds us of the importance of evaluating, meditating, and acting with intention, not impulsively. Patience is another dimension of divine wisdom. Ecclesiastes 7:12 says, "For wisdom is a shield, and money is a shield, but the advantage of wisdom is that it gives life to those who have it." Wisdom acts as a shield, protecting us from mistakes, bad decisions, and negative consequences. It allows us to wait, reflect, and act with discernment, even when results are not immediate. Its value surpasses any material wealth because it transforms our lives and guides us toward right decisions and lasting blessings. Proverbs 16:16 reminds us, "Wisdom is better than gold, and understanding is better than silver." This wisdom is invaluable because it not only instructs, but also transforms. It enables us to face challenges calmly, lead fairly, love patiently, and serve humbly. Every moment we choose God's guidance over our own impulses is a manifestation of this wisdom, which produces eternal and visible fruit. Proverbs 9:10 reaffirms, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." This wisdom begins with reverence for God and extends to every area of our lives. It teaches us to trust, discern, and act with justice and righteousness. It reminds us that true intelligence comes not from human knowledge alone, but from a life aligned with God and His principles. In Psalm 111 verse 10, we find a similar principle. "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Good understanding is had by all who do His commandments. His praise endures forever." Wisdom is manifested in obedience to and the practice of God's commandments, producing deep understanding, clear direction, and a life that honors God. Every wise decision strengthens our path and enables us to act in ways that benefit us and others. Proverbs 4:7 emphasizes again, "Wisdom is the first thing. Get wisdom, and with all your possessions get understanding." This command reminds us that the pursuit of wisdom must be constant, daily, and a priority. It is not a passing knowledge, but a continuous practice that guides our thinking, our emotions, and our actions. God's wisdom teaches us to discern, to act prudently, and to live purposefully, building a solid and fruitful life. Proverbs 8:11 concludes with a profound reminder, "For wisdom is better than rubies, and nothing we desire can compare with it." Godly wisdom not only protects and guides us, it gives us an eternal perspective. It teaches us to value what truly matters and to live with integrity, faith, and love. Every day, as we seek, apply, and meditate on God's wisdom, we grow in discernment, peace, and clarity, reflecting the light and purpose of our Creator in our lives. As we reach the end of this journey through the wisdom that comes from God, we inevitably pause to reflect on its depth and impact on our lives. Divine wisdom is not simply accumulated knowledge or intellectual skill. It is a gift that transforms our hearts, our minds, and our decisions. It is the light that illuminates our path amid confusion, the compass that guides us when we feel lost, and the silent strength that sustains us when we face difficulties. Each Bible verse we have reviewed reminds us that wisdom begins with the fear of the Lord, with recognizing that God is the source of all understanding, and that by aligning ourselves with His ways, we acquire discernment that transcends our human understanding. The impact of God's wisdom is manifest in every aspect of our existence. It teaches us to act with patience, to value humility over pride, to discern right from wrong, and to build relationships that reflect justice, love, and compassion. It guides us in our daily decision-making, both ordinary and momentous, reminding us that even the simplest acts can become expressions of faith and obedience when done intentionally and under God's guidance. Wisdom protects us from error, gives us clarity in the face of uncertainty, and enables us to act with prudence and discernment in complex or unexpected situations. Reflecting on divine wisdom also invites us to examine our hearts. It challenges us to evaluate our priorities, recognize where we need to grow, and cultivate habits that bring us closer to the fulfillment God desires for us. It reminds us that the pursuit of wisdom is an ongoing process. It is not a state achieved instantly, but rather a path that requires perseverance, prayer, reading the Word, and a willingness to learn. Every day is an opportunity to ask God for understanding, meditate on His teachings, and apply His guidance in our actions, decisions, and relationships. Furthermore, the wisdom that comes from God has an effect that transcends our personal lives. It empowers us to positively impact those around us, to be a light in the midst of darkness, an example of integrity, and a guide in times of confusion. As we are reminded in Proverbs, wisdom produces fruits: peace, justice, patience, love, and mercy. These fruits not only benefit us, they influence our family, our friends, our community, and all those we come into contact with. Living wisely is, in essence, living in harmony with God, allowing His light to shine through every decision and action. The conclusion of this reflection also invites us to contemplate the eternal perspective that wisdom offers. It teaches us that life is not limited to temporal successes, achievements, or possessions. Every action taken with divine discernment has eternal value. It reminds us that by trusting in God, seeking His guidance and applying His wisdom, we are building a life of purpose which transcends the mundane and brings us closer to fulfilling His will. Wisdom enables us to live with joy and gratitude, recognizing that even trials and difficulties are opportunities to grow, learn, and strengthen our faith. Finally, this closing brings us to a profound call to spiritual and personal action. It is not enough to know wisdom. We must apply it, live it, and share it. God's wisdom invites us to pray continually, to meditate on His word, to trust in His direction, and to act with integrity and love in every situation. It reminds us that every choice is meaningful, that every thought can be an act of faith, and that our lives can reflect God's light at all times. As we close this reflection, the message is clear. The wisdom that comes from God is an incomparable treasure, a beacon of hope and guidance, and a transformative force that can change not only our lives, but also the lives of those around us. May the wisdom that comes from God accompany you every day, illuminating your steps, guiding your decisions, and strengthening your heart. May you learn to recognize His voice, depend on His guidance, and live with discernment and love, reflecting His light in a world that often lacks direction. May the peace, understanding, and clarity that come from divine wisdom fill your life, and may you remember at every moment that, as you seek God with sincerity and obedience, you will find an understanding that transcends all human knowledge, a beacon that never goes out, and a sure path to the fulfillment He has prepared for you. I invite you to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell so you don't miss any inspiring messages, and if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it with them. Wisdom and peace multiply when we share them.